Okay. Hello, everyone. I am H.P. Holo, and he is Jacob Holo, and we are authors who talk about stuff. And today, we are here to talk about stuff. You may notice that my throat is a little scratchy. That's because I partied so hard at MarchCon last week that I apparently destroyed my immune system. So I'm recovering from some con crud and prioritizing being cozy tonight. So I got my little Palico jammies on. I got my cough drops, I've got my water, and we're all good to go. So
yeah, we both got the con crud, but you definitely it hit you a lot harder than it hit me.
Oh yeah, I was incoherent for a little bit, but I did manage to get your latest book copy edited. So woo! Hopefully it was good copy editing.
No, it was very good copy edit. Thank you.
All right, it's actually a little warm in here now. Okay, we're taking the eyes off. Dazzle, don't attack my head. Okay. So, hello everyone. We are changing up the structure of our show a little bit. We're going to talk about our writing updates and whatnot toward the end, since we tend to go so long talking about them, or since I tend to go so long, and Jacob looks at me like,
last time it took us 20 minutes to get to the actual topic.
Yes.
So perhaps we should jump in a bit more aggressively.
So we are going to roughly start with the topic of the month, which is what inspires us. And this is actually a pretty popularly voted on topic from our readers, which surprised me because it's the kind of question, it's the kind of question authors get asked all the time at cons and whatnot. But it's like, I lost my train of thought. Oh, that's going to be the theme of tonight. But it's the kind of thing you hear us say all the time at cons and whatnot. So I guess tonight we're actually going to be able to do a little bit more than the generic I'm talking quickly on a panel kind of descriptions of how we get inspired. So I will say, you guys, though, if there are specific series that we've written or books that we've written and you want to know the inspirations behind those specific things, we're going to start off talking a little general, but then we're going to go into talking about what made each series kind of come to fruition. Before we do that, though, some quick book news. We have 2 pre-orders up, which we will talk about more later, but the Thermopylae Protocol is up, which is Jacob's latest collaboration with David Weber. It's Gordian Division number 6. Pre-order link is in the event description, wherever you are. And then also Blood Knight Vampire Slayer, the next Edie Skye, is up, and the link is also in the description. And finally, just for those who are listening, we are running a little contest. So if you want to win a copy of either the Dyson File or the Hot Springs episode, which is our 2 latest releases, there's a form also in the event description you can fill out. We will select 2 winners. And people who we're taking a little hint from the Bain Roadshow here, in that if you are a veteran or teacher or librarian or first responder or anyone in that amazingly valuable group, you get double entries. So double chances to win our small thanks for the service you provide. So now let me get our chat pulled up so I don't actually miss anybody. And all right. So again, everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. Hello to everyone who is watching, and I guess we're going to begin. So, question, Jacob, what inspires you?
That is so broad.
It is. Well,
I mean, in general, a lot of the, media and life and experiences that, we as authors either consume or have, ends up reflected in our works.
Yeah, and I think that's great.
I was in the middle of answering, Heather.
I'm gonna hide under my hood and be quiet.
Okay.
I can't actually.
It's not a long answer, but
okay.
But a lot of times, I'll be enjoying some other property, whether it be through literature or like a movie or show or a game, anything really, and it'll make me feel a certain way. I'll feel an emotion, like a scene will get me excited or make me sad or something like that, and I'll want to emulate that feeling for my readers. And that sort of kind of, for me, sometimes forms the core of an idea. There's also other things where I'll really like a certain aspect of a property and kind of want to do the same thing, but with my own spin on it, because I just have to.
Yep.
And a lot of times, what gets copied is not copied, but what the end result is completely different from what inspired it. And do you want me to go into examples yet, or are we keeping things?
Well, we can go into examples after we finish the broad opening.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of it's like, okay, so this goes back to what was it? I used a quote from Jiro Dreams of Sushi. You remember that one?
Oh yeah, the one panel, yeah.
Right. So Jiro is this just hugely experienced master sushi chef, and in the program that kind of chronicles his exploits as a sushi chef, his accomplishments. He says, in order to, and I'm paraphrasing here, in order to produce good food, you have to consume good food. And to a certain degree, I feel the same way about literature. That consuming really good literature helps me produce really good literature. At least I hope people think what I produce is good. But it's the things that can end up sparking the idea for a series are very varied. And I think it's important for us to distinguish that, we're not just talking about inspiration for series. There's also inspiration for characters, inspiration for scenes, settings, tech or magic systems. We get our information from a wide variety of sources.
Yeah.
So I think, this part, I'm being very broad, but once we get into the specifics of, say, like a particular series or particular book, there's a lot of interesting corners for us to explore in terms of what the actual nitty-gritty inspiration is.
My idea origins are very similar to yours in that overwhelmingly they tend to draw from whatever media I'm reading or watching or playing at any given time. But I also tend to just get ideas from being distracted and being a smartass. And it's very often.
Trust me, I know this about you.
You know this. Very often, as an example, one of my absolute favorite writing exercises to do is sort of a little word association game where I start with a word in the center and then I come up with every word that this word makes me think of, and then I come up and then I create a more broad web of every word that the other words I've created make me think of, and they often lead to very random and very unexpected places. It's one of the reasons why, I can remind me to talk about the dragons in Titan Mage when we get to that point. Okay. Fingers crossed. Remind me. Somebody in the comments remind me too. This is on you guys. But I find, like, with my particular media, whenever I watch a good movie in particular, I keep its vibe and I keep its feeling, but good movies do not inspire me nearly as much as terrible movies do. And I owe my entire creative life to terrible movies and terrible TV shows. And the primary reason why is because with good movies, for the most part, they're kind of complete products. Like when I watch Lord of the Rings, I enjoy it the whole way through. And while there are little corners that I might want to explore, the film series itself feels so well threaded together that I don't really have any distracted motivation to go check out those corners. Whereas if I'm watching something with a whole ton of plot holes, it becomes a little playground for my mind. And I will, like, sometimes we'll be watching a bad movie that I've recommended. Jacob has put me on a bad movie diet. He only allows me to recommend so many movies per year now.
It is a finite resource that I have, my
Yeah.
tolerance for bad movies, and so you have to choose when you draw from that resource, because I can
Yep.
only put up with
Yep.
so much.
So I will say, when we were first married, one of my favorite things that you would do is you would get me bad movies as gifts. And it wasn't the movie that was the gift so much as your reactions that you would give while watching it. And Jacob has some really great bad movie reactions that they're amazing.
I narrate, I comment,
Oh yeah,
I
he narrates.
pause and critique.
Oh yeah. Most of my scientific knowledge comes from Jacob watching a movie, going, and then me pausing it and saying, Jacob, what physics did they get wrong? And yeah, other than that. But going back to bad movies being a playground for the mind, sometimes when we're watching bad movies, Jacob will turn to me and point out a detail in the movie we're watching and be like, what? How does this make sense? And I will just BS something on the spot.
Oh yeah.
And oh yeah. And the thing is, for me, like, my creative brain is one that is continually trying to make things make sense. It's one of the reasons why I consider one of my greatest skills as an author, taking completely dumbass ideas and making them work. Because I do that as I watch every movie, and I do it especially as I watch bad movies. And I've gotten quite a few ideas just from making some kind of stupid remark about whatever we're watching and then being like, huh, that could work if treated the right way. And yeah, so it's I enjoy just play, like, words are not wording today. I'm sick. Let's go to the next topic.
Well,
So, all right.
I mean, you mentioned what you do with the bad movies and the plot holes. What I like to do with good movies and good books is I like to analyze how they function. You know, kind of try to peek underneath the hood, so to speak.
I do that too.
Yes,
but it's work.
But I think I probably do that more. You probably find it and you probably have an easier time just sitting back and enjoying a good movie. Whereas I'm just sort of like watching, it's like, okay, why are they, like introducing this character at this point? Why are they, just kind of, analyzing the structure of it, analyzing the choices and trying to glean something from that.
It takes such effort for me to get my brain to turn off that when it is off, I like to keep it off. And it drives me crazy whenever Jacob comments on movies. Like, we went to see, what was it? We went to see Wonka. And before we went into the theater, I turned to you and said, you are not allowed to analyze this movie on the way home. And then I changed my mind because I wanted to talk about it.
Well, and then you're like, on the drive home, you're trying to get me to talk about the movie. I'm like, wait a second. You told me not talk about the movie. And so I'm sitting here being quiet while you talk at me about the movie.
I gave you permission.
Yes, but I didn't know if it was a trap or not.
I don't do traps. I'm not that subtle.
I was being cautious.
There's nothing subtle in my entire body, Jacob. We've been married 11 years. You should know this by now. 11 years. 11. You're the person with the numbers.
Yeah, 11 years.
Okay, good. I was right. Yay. All right. So, what series do we want to talk about first?
Oh, geez.
Because all of them come from interesting places. So there's the Gordian division, but that's really more of, that was a David origin.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of it, my contributions to Gordian division are more in the details. Because David provided, the initial concept. David did the alternate history, not only for the first book, but throughout the series. Whenever we dip far into the past, he did a number of the character designs.
Mhm.
Though I found out later that I misinterpreted some of his designs.
Oh, yeah. Is that where you killed someone you weren't supposed to
No,
kill?
no, that was a completely different mishap.
What was that?
Where the characterizations for Rybert and Philo,
Mhm.
he originally kind of had them swapped,
Huh.
where um, Philo was a bit more of a troublemaker,
Mhm.
whereas in the final version, Philo, because he's much older and he's an AI and all that, he's a bit more level-headed, and
Mhm.
Rybert is his he's just kind of this big ball of anxiety sometimes. That it isn't made any better because of what happens to him throughout the first book.
Yeah.
But my work on the underlying development, yeah, I designed the two 30th centuries
Mhm.
societies, the tech and whatnot, and
And that actually brings up an excellent question because they're crazy complex. And I know you're into physics and I know like you're maybe not into time travel, but you which is kind of ironic that you said you would never write a time travel book when you're 6 books into the series now.
yeah,
But
yeah.
where
Well, never
did
say
you get
never.
the ideas for such vastly different universes and also for the time travel system itself?
So,
Because I personally have this vague recollection of physics reading that you did, but that is all I remember.
yeah, I mean, a lot of nonfiction um, ended up informing the design of the two societies, Syscov and the admin.
Mhm,
And while the nature of the time travel system is something we made up, I did take inspiration from actual physics, so that there is in the Goring division series, there's a particle. It's called a chronoton, and it has behaviors that are kind of theorized as being possible um, for actual particles, for something to have a closed loop history rather than like, say from past to future going one direction. It actually just kind of goes in a loop. And and that sometimes the particle's moving backwards in time, sometimes moving forward in time. Of course, some time is rather subjective when you're dealing with time travel and a particle that moves backwards and forwards through time. But try to, even though it's a very, it's the magic trick. Well, there are
mhm.
two, I think two magic tricks that we use in the Goring division. The time travel is one of them, and it's a magic trick. It's not something that we don't know how to build a chronoton impeller or
Mhm.
chronometric impeller, but try to ground it in kind of the look and feel of actual engineering and actual science, even though it's
Yeah.
all made up.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff with the societies. I remember, I was I I had just come off of writing a manuscript that ended up not being published, and I had like a whole bunch of like holograms, that was being utilized for like user interfaces and stuff. And I'm like, wait a second, I can do better than this. And so I that's where the augmented reality aspect of the settings came from. That there's there's the physical setting, and then there is a virtual or abstract portion to the setting. They're seeing the AIs as uh, avatars that are being projected into their field of vision via their um, basically either their wetware or their implants, depending on which society we're looking at. Now, David did have a hand in both of those societies. What he did is he kind of provided, I liken it to like a picture frame. He gave me the borders. It's like, okay, here's what these two societies need to do in the story. This is what we need, how they're going to be interacting, what functions they need to play, and how they're going to be different, generally speaking. And I filled in the details. I had this file of like, at the time I thought, oh, this is, full of crazy ideas and David's going to tell me no. And I sent him the file and he basically said yes to everything. So that's, where a lot of the flavor for those two societies came from.
We got a question.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So speaking of Gordian Protocol, hello, Howard. Howard Cohen says books 3 to 5 of the Gordian Protocol are police procedurals in outer space. Where's the detective aspect come from?
That is an excellent question. So after we finished book 2, the Valkyrie Protocol, we were on a pretty steep trajectory in terms of escalation. And one of the concerns and that David had is that we would eventually run out of apocalypses to throw at our main characters. And this is a valid concern when, you go from book 1 where you've got this, like part of the story is, a dogfight between, I think it's like 8 different time machines, militarized time machines. And in book 2, you have a fleet action involving, I want to say like 300 time machines and a time traveling battle station. So it's the curve was steep, and he's like, and so the thought was to sort of split the series into 2 separate tracks. The protocol books being the big, epic, existential threat stuff, and then what became the file books to be a much tighter focus, a much more personal story. Though it's all within the same setting, and then there's cross-pollination between the 2 casts. And David suggested that we do a police procedural. We created an initial draft outline, which we submitted to Toni Weisskopf, Bane's publisher. And she said, this is a thriller, not a police procedural. Jacob, go read Ed McBain's 87, the 10 or so of the 87th Precinct novels. And so I read those books, and I was, as is appropriate to this topic, I was inspired. Those were fantastic books. I basically, through them, I discovered a new genre. I discovered that I really wanted to write in that genre. And that I think my writing style meshes very well with the police procedural format, because I am very much a planner, not a pantser. And so all of the file books, before before I'm even writing the first word, I had designed the how the crime was going to be committed in detail. So yeah, the Ed McBain, big inspiration for the last few novels that I've been involved with. And for those books, I think David, well, David's certainly been involved heavily throughout the series. He stepped a little bit back with the file books, and I was able to step a little bit forward. So a lot more of my writing voice ended up in the file books. And I had a lot of fun with those. And Isaac and Susan are two of my favorite characters to write.
Oh, you have fun.
But they're also so I think where does aspect? Okay, so I have answered the question. I just wanted I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't rambling and hadn't completely gone off track. So I just
You're fine. At some point, we need to talk about the inspirations for Titan Mage, because that's one that we collaborated on pretty closely. But first, I actually want to bring up Monster Punk Horizon, because that one had some really interesting background. Oh, and Howard says, so no personal law enforcement background. Nope, just Ed McBain novels. And so yeah, and did you interview any law enforcement officers that we knew, or was it almost exclusively novels? I can't remember. It's been so long since you started that.
No, I faked it. I wrote a bunch of police procedurals and then I went to town. But I think that there's so this may sound weird, but
no, not from us.
There's some parallels between how I kind of think in terms of, I have an engineering background, and I think I was actually able to apply that engineering background to writing police procedurals. Okay, that sounds very weird. Bear with me for a moment. I'm going to try to explain this because it sometimes doesn't even make sense in my head. But the way that I think of an engineer is that we are kind of trained technical problem solvers, and we go about solving those problems in a very well-structured manner, and well-organized manner. And we have to have all of our T's crossed and all our I's dotted. Otherwise, bad stuff happens, and in the extreme, people can die. So we have to go about our business in a very orderly, very well-structured manner, very professional manner. And I think some of that applies to, trying to, going about, investigating a case, in following each lead, building, building the pieces of the case, following finding the red herring, crossing it off the list until you've got your final solution. You've got this is the guy or gal who did it, and going in and arresting them. And they're not the same by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there are certain thought processes that apply to both. And so I think there's, a bit of engineer Jacob in Isaac Cho. I mean, he's my character, so yes, of course there is, but but yeah, I faked it.
All right, my turn.
Okay, go ahead.
So
Titan Mage, right?
All right. I want to do a quick little talk about Monster Punk Horizon. I think Monster Punk Horizon is actually a really good example of how I approach taking inspiration from media. And a little background on Monster Punk Horizon. There was some really rough stuff going on in my life at the time when Monster Punk Horizon arose. I was having real difficulty writing on a structural level, but also we had family members in and out of the hospital and stuff of that nature. And I just really wanted to write something that made me feel good. And at that time, the pieces of media in my life that were making me feel good were things like Pokemon, Digimon, and things that I had really enjoyed as a child. And it occurred to me that I still very much enjoy monster hunting and collecting and befriending franchises as an adult to this day. And at that time, the inspiration I was really, really playing a lot of Monster Hunter, Capcom's Monster Hunter, and there came a point where I was like, you know what, I'm going to toss aside whatever I was writing before because it wasn't working anyway. I just want to write some kind of homage to these things that make me absolutely happy. Hi, Joy! And so I went and was like, you know what, I'm going to write a monster hunting thing that is just an absolute pastiche or loving reference to all of these monster collecting things that I loved. And one of my rules,
it's pretty much a Holo love letter is what it is.
Yeah. Oh, one of my rules when I derive inspiration from a piece of media is to, first thing, determine what in my world is going to make it distinct and what's going to be in some ways opposite. Like, and if I go back to the very, very beginning of my writing, The Wizard's Way started out as me wanting to write Harry Potter, but steampunk. And in the original, like way back 10 years ago version of The Wizard's Way, the question was basically, what if Harry Potter got magic, but it made his life suck? And the original version of The Wizard's Way was much, much darker. It changed quite substantially over the course of its writing and editing, but there was that. And I looked at Monster Hunter in particular because that was what I was really vibing with at the time. And my complete opposite question was, what if Monster Hunter actually had a story? because Monster Hunter has an excuse to go hunt monsters. It doesn't really have or Monster Hunter World, I should say, which was the one that I was playing for the most part.
It's got a little bit of a story.
A little bit of a story, but not enough. Like, you don't play Monster Hunter games for the story. And so that was where I started. But then I was also, when I was putting together this world, I knew it was going to be a reference to a bunch of different things. And I wanted it to not only be limited to monster franchises. I wanted to be able to have fun with RPG concepts, with anime, with other concepts that related to nerd things that I love. And so at that point, I was like, okay, there's I lost my train of thought again. Man, I thought I was getting better from this con crud, but it is sticking with me. One moment. And so at the time, there was not really an isekai element in Monster Hunter that I was aware of. And one image from some random anime that really stuck with me was the image of this sky that sparkled with stars during the day. And I think it was just, I don't even think it had any relevance in whatever anime I was watching. I think it was just a cool, like, opening credits background that they used. But I was like, what could lead that kind of sky to happen? And from that developed the whole concept of, oh, these stars are really portals and things fall through the portals. And it basically makes my world infinite because I can make anything fall through the portals. And that's essentially the basis for the Monster Punk Horizon universe. But I also bring up Monster Punk Horizon because it is absolutely a prime example of how chaotic and associative my writing can be, because the Monster Punk had very loose outlines. And I very often, when I wrote Monster Punk, and to this day when I write, I like to come up with certain details on the fly. And a lot of the characters were basically just pastiches of RPG races and whatnot, or combinations thereof. But the monsters actually were something that I put some thought into. But there are some monsters that are just random. But one of the things that I absolutely remember loving in childhood, since it is a very childhood joy inspired series, was going to the library and picking up books about random animals. And kids' books are the best for animals. Like, adult books, like, they're all factual and you know, like, lots of information. Very nice. Kids' books about animals are like, here's a little thin picture book about all the animals that will kill you in the worst ways. Here's the most dangerous bugs. Here's the most dangerous songbirds. and things of that nature. And so whenever I'm inventing the monsters, I'll just go to the kids section in the library, grab a whole bunch of books, and just spread them out on the table and have a grand old time just picking out stuff. And then when I find a monster that really, really interests me, or is set in a or lives in a kind of ecosystem that I want to write about, I'll just be like, heck yeah, let's take this songbird, make it dinosaur sized, and make it, I don't know, fart fire or something. And it's just
that sounds like something that would end up in one of your
I grab a
books.
whole bunch of ideas and just try to make them work together. And it's one of the things that just makes the series so unhinged and so fun. And so yeah, that's Monster Punk Horizon. But now, Titan Mage, I want to talk about because it has a lot of interesting origins, and it's also a series that, even though it's written under the singular Edie Skye name, it's very much a collaborative series. And it came from a bunch of different directions. And I mean, we've told I think we've told the long story of how Titan Mage happened before. So I guess since we've got 20 minutes left, I say let's focus on the actual
focus on
for it.
on the topic, on the how what inspired it.
So, and I want to say, long story short, Jacob and I sat down and decided we wanted to collaborate on a giant robot harem series. Why giant robots? Because Jacob had written the Seraphim Revival series, and I'd been wanting to write a giant robot series forever, and just hadn't really landed on the right concept. Problem being that sci-fi readers in general tend to have difficulty with giant robots because giant robots are so they're unrealistic weapons.
Very impractical.
A lot of sci-fi readers are reading for the hard sci-fi, and it's just it's really difficult to produce convincing hard sci-fi that involves giant robots. And I had never really landed on a sci-fi concept where I could make it work. And then we started talking about the harem genre, and specifically the pulpiness of the harem genre. And when you're talking about pulp adventure, its rules are looser, and it opens the world up for a lot more fun. And at that point, I suddenly remembered one of my favorite mecha anime of all time, which is The Vision of Escaflowne. And I was like, well, why don't we just do a fantasy pulp setting? And part of it too is that I get so sad at the fact that Escaflowne is an all but forgotten anime. I love it so much. It's a gorgeous fantasy mecha anime. It combines high fantasy with like giant knight mechs and all this great stuff. And it's just once I recalled it, I really, really wanted to write something like that because it's so cool. And that's ultimately what I like to write these days. I like to write things that are just damn cool and make you feel like you're having a good time as you read it.
The main mech transforms into a robot dragon.
Yeah. I actually kind of regret not making a mech turn into a dragon in Titan Mage. You're going to have to remedy that in later series. But from your end.
So, in terms of the actual inspiration, I mean, I think there was probably some even not even killing Escaflowne in there. I mean, it was it.
Had we just watched the collector's set?
I'm sorry, what?
Had we watched the collector's? You had gotten me an Escaflowne collector's edition.
Oh yeah, we
before or did
before.
We watch it?
Oh yeah, way before.
I can't remember. Yeah. I'm bad with time.
Yeah. But I mean, definitely, wanted to approach it from a fantasy, standpoint, just because hard sci-fi and giant robots, they're just not gonna, they don't really work all that well. But
easier in fantasy, and it's especially easier in something like harem, which is kind of by nature, it's a genre that requires you to suspend disbelief. To just the belief that it'll work.
And so I had the idea. I think the magic system also goes back to all like the new physics books that I was reading at the time.
Yeah, the magic system is all Jacob. I had nothing to do with that.
So, well, until you did.
When?
like the when you started introducing stuff like the Void Bracer.
Oh yeah, but that's not the magic system. That's just the
No,
tools.
but you're sort of like taking the magic system that I designed it and bending it, and I'm trying to find ways not to have it break in half. Yeah.
I have faith in you.
Some
You
of
can
some
do
of the fun that we have as collaborators, and me as essentially like a an editor, to having like an editorial role on the series and trying to
Jacob
keep all
is
the
kind
lore
of
straight.
you're kind of the lore master of the series, where you keep all the quote unquote physics rules in your head, and whenever I'm tripped up on something, I can basically turn to you and say, "Hey Jacob, can I do this?" And you tell me whether I can or not.
And sometimes I'm just like, if you really want to, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it, and you just do it anyway.
Yep, I do what I want.
But I had kind of I had the idea for the magic system was to have an elemental based magic system, but have it be sort of grounded in some science. And so instead of having, sort of like say that, the classical magical elements, fire, water, wind, earth, stuff like that, or yeah. We have matter, energy, time, gravity, and then the
spoilers.
Yes, yeah, I wasn't gonna. And the spoiler element that we threw in there.
Yes.
And so I having that as sort of like the seed of the concept. It's like, okay, well, the magic is based off of these, kind of, I guess, actual scientific, concepts, principles. Okay, manipulating them. And so manipulating matter, manipulating energy, manipulating time, manipulating gravity, manipulating X. Which and honestly, the fifth one is there's a lot of, if we're trying to tie it into actual physics, there's a lot of hand waving going on with that.
The thing is, there occasionally I'll get a reviewer who calls the ending of Titan Mage really ridiculous and over the top. And what these reviewers fail to realize is that when I was writing this book, I was basically, or when I was writing this series, I was writing a Studio Trigger anime, but with words. Yeah. And if you've watched any Studio Trigger mech anime, it ends like you would expect a Studio Trigger mech anime to end. And I take a lot of inspiration. Like, no joke, you guys.
In that regard, you were actually quite restrained.
I was actually, well, I knew I was going to write subsequent series, and it's like, I knew I couldn't have them throwing galaxies at themselves at the end of book 5, because I have to make that happen later. And yes, Joy says, please click that like button. Yes, please like us and subscribe to us, you guys. We love you. But as I was writing Titan Mage, I drew inspiration from, it's kind of
obvious. What about the dragons?
Oh yeah, I want to get to the dragons.
Okay, well, you told me to remind you, so I know, I've got a note right here.
But when I was writing Titan Mage, I was essentially trying to emulate the kinds of feelings I had when I was sitting down, like in front of the TV when I was little, Saturday morning cartoons, and all those feelings of excitement that would happen whenever something really, really epic occurred on screen. And in those days, with some shows you had to wait a week between episodes, so it made certain things even more epic because you had to wait that long. And it's just there's nothing like childish excitement at your favorite childhood media. And I wanted to capture that whenever I wrote the giant mech scenes, especially. Obviously the sex scenes are something else entirely, but so there was that. But also in terms of, like, I literally started every writing day by watching the climactic scene from the second Gurren Lagann movie. And that put me in the proper writing mode for it. There's another video that I really, really loved watching toward the end, that it was basically a whole bunch of like anime missile porn set to the tune of Yellow Line from Red Line. and which is just this really, really infectious, throbbing music track. It's amazing. But I would watch those two, and then I had the proper enthusiasm, and I was ready to go. And I would try to emulate the feelings felt when watching those things. Now for the dragon,
you do the feeling thing too. You do
yeah,
that
I do.
too.
Yeah. But I wanted to bring up the dragons because they're actually a really interesting example of how my associative brain works. The dragons, in the outlines, the dragons were not very defined at all. Like we had Ultranoth, who was a character, but
And
was,
before you continue, I just wanted to point out that was intentional because I wanted to essentially provide sort of a foundation and a skeleton for you to then explore, and that process worked.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why our outlines for things we collaborate on are intentionally vague in certain areas. My outlines, or our outlines, really only consist of what's absolutely necessary to push the plot forward, and then when I'm doing the principal writing, it's my job to make sure that the characters get there in an interesting way. And but as long as these things happen, as long as these specific things happen, the story can function and everything's hunky dory. But with the dragons, I think I actually went a little further than you even intended me to.
Oh yeah.
Because okay, so book 3 came around, and in Titan Age, and since the entire series had already been outlined, I knew the trajectory of the series. I knew that the last 2 books were going to be pretty much an extended climax that didn't have a whole lot of room for extra world building. Also, at that time, books 1 and 2 had come out, and this I was beginning to see that the series was attaining far more popularity than I expected it to, and I was curious to see how far into my my detailed world building preferences I could push it. And excuse me, my throat's getting dry. And I was like, you know what? Book 3 is really the only point in this series in which I'm gonna actually have time to have fun with the world building.
And how many words did you go over?
Well, how
40,000 words.
Yeah, this is when the book started getting huge. But since the theme of the book was dragons because of Ultranoth, I decided to have a little fun embellishing upon the dragons themselves. And what the way my brain worked on this was I needed a reason for the dragons to be this sort of, oh, excuse me again, my throat's getting dry. Man, I needed a reason for the dragons to be significant to the world of Haven other than, oh my gosh, dragons, they're cool. I mean, dragons are cool, but I didn't want them to just be these traditional fantasy creatures. And so I did my little word association, and it occurred to me that another term for dragon is worm, W-Y-R-M. I'm a gardener. I know the kind of significance that earthworms have to gardens and soil, replenishing the soil, making it important, or not making it important, but nourishing it. And I was like, what if I can use the dragons to serve some kind of nourishing, significant purpose, like worms? And eventually that led to me basically saying, hey, the dragons are Haven's source of magic. And yeah, that was how that happened.
They're basically magical terraformers.
Yeah, they're essentially magical terraformers, and which goes back to the whole precursor thing and whatnot. It was a whole thing. But yeah, so hold on.
I think in terms of the world building of all the stuff that you came up with, I think that aspect's my favorite.
Oh yeah, I love my little dragon worms. Yes, I'm looking forward to writing more of them in subsequent series because we've got like, oh man, how many Titan Mage series do we have planned now? It's a ton. I'm looking, as much as I'm enjoying.
Every time I turn around, you've got an idea for a new series. So
as much as I'm enjoying writing Monster Girl Tamer, I'm really excited to just plow through the second 2 books or the other half of book 1 and get back to Titan Mage because there's a lot of fun stuff coming down the line. All right, we are down to our last 10 minutes. And are there any other things you want to talk about in terms of inspiration, Jacob? And also, people, there's plenty of time to ask questions if you have any specific stuff you want to hear about. Jacob?
Nothing really comes to mind. I think we can. I'll think on it while we
There's still
go
plenty of
through.
time to. We've got to go over all of our writing stuff too. So all right,
Yeah.
let's see here. Writing news. So I got. Yeah, we have writing news. Do you want to start with yours first, since you finished another book in a month?
I finished another book in a month. I wrote what, like 93,000 words the past month, and that's
Yeah. Okay.
including losing a week while we were at MarsCon.
The last time we did this show, had we even put Blood Knight up for pre-order? Have we even mentioned Blood Knight on this show yet? I can't even remember.
I think we did.
Okay.
But I don't think we've said a lot about it.
For those who are new, Jacob got bored between traditional publishing contracts and sat down and said, I think I'll just write another book. Then he finished a book in a month. And then he was like, I still have time. I'm just going to write this whole series. And now you finished book 2. So explain your series, Jacob. It is an Edie Skye collaboration.
So, the first book is Blood Knight, Vampire Slayer, and it is urban fantasy, and it involves the main character is he finds out that he is a Blood Knight. He is descended from a nearly extinct line of very powerful vampire hunters. And he also learns that vampires secretly rule the world. And a group of lovely young ladies who also have, it's a harem novel, recruit him to assist them in overthrowing the vampires who rule the world. So it's 5 college students against the vampires who rule the world. And they start small, but there is a planned trajectory to have them achieve their ultimate goal in book 5.
Speaking of what inspires us, what was the inspiration for this series? Because we collaborated a little loosely on it in the beginning, but you primarily took the lead on it, and I just said, yes, I like that idea.
Yeah. Part of it was that the past few years have been difficult for me, health-wise. I've had a lot of health issues, particularly dealing with chronic nerve pain. And side effects from chronic nerve pain. So last year, Dave and I, we finished the Thermopylae Protocol, which will come out in June, I believe, this year. That was, I had a severe, while I was working on that book, I had a severe nerve pain relapse. And I basically didn't write anything for 6 months. Then Dave and I, we finished the book, we turned it in. It was well received by the publisher and editors. And we're very happy with how that one ended up. But I sort of needed a palate cleanser. And also I would just, I keep, looking over at my lovely wife / co-author and all the fun you're having.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like,
Fighting Mage is the most fun thing I've ever written.
I feel like, dipping my toe into some of this fun. And I ended up, and so I came up with a basic concept. I bounced, a lot of the ideas off you. So there was definitely back and forth there. And then, at a certain point, I was making outlines for you. So I was outlining Monster Girl Tamer 1, 2, and 3. I outlined.
We made it. Hey, Ruby.
Hey, Fruby. I outlined Titan Mage Havoc and the Frigid Fire. Is that what we're calling it right now?
Yeah, right now.
And so, and then I'm like, you know what? I've got time. I'll just make another outline. And so I outlined Blood Knight. And then I'm like, I was sort of expecting to have my next contract by now, and part of it's that I've got like 2 novels queued up with Bane right now. They're not really like hugely desperate for another book from me. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got a bit of a break from writing to the traditional stuff. Why not help out Heather? And so, I had the Blood Knight outline already prepared. The original intention was that Heather would write it. And so I sat down. I was like, you know what? Even if I just like get part of the way through, that's less work that for Heather to do. And so I started writing, and I just kept going and kept going. It kept going, and before the month was out, I had like basically the whole thing done, except for your contributions, which I'm just going to leave purposefully vague, but your contributions are to our harem series. And so, I gave you that manuscript, and I'm like, you know what? I could just keep going.
Blood Knight crave to be written. Oh, and Joy also says, "Can I volunteer to beta read that for you?" Heck yes, Joy. I will totally send it to you once we have it edited. I'm halfway through editing right now.
Thank you.
And so yes, we could definitely hook you up.
We definitely appreciate beta readers.
Yes.
So and I had I had the basic, concept for where I wanted to take things, and then in the process of outlining book 2, those elements solidified, and I was like looking at the various beats and what I wanted to accomplish, and I'm like, you know what? I could wrap up this entire series in 5 books.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Yep. So we're having to shift the Edie Skye publication schedule too, because I was originally expecting to release just Monster Punk this year, or Monster Girl Tamer, and now by June I'm going to have 5 more books, and so we actually
we're
going to be releasing extra. But
I still have to write those 3 more books, and
yeah.
But I mean,
what a difference it's going to be.
It's also, writing Blood Knight. Okay, so like let's take something like the solo novel that I have coming up in November of this year, Freelancers of Neptune. It's like, okay, I need to get characters from point A to point B. How do I do that? All right, I need to get them into their spaceship. I got to start doing kinematic equations to make sure that how long it's going to take them, how fast they're going to be moving, at what point they're going to do turnaround, blah, 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 blah. If it's, depending on things, are the planets in the right position? Are the speeds high enough that time dilation is going to be a factor? And all these things that, get characters from point A to point B. Okay, Blood Knight. They get in a car. They drive there. They get out of the car. The next scene can, proceed with next scene.
Speaking of which, I prepared the cover for this because the cover needs to be seen.
Oh boy.
Continue talking, Jacob. I got to pull it up. Okay, here it is. Cover for Blood Knight and Vampire Slayer. Oh wow. Is it showing?
I don't see anything.
I
don't think you clicked the right button or something went wrong.
Oh, it says I am sharing. Well, if it's not showing for our viewers, just go and look on Amazon.
But and it really has been a palate cleanser. I've noticed that I've really enjoyed, taking a break from, the hard sci-fi stuff. And part of it is that I think part of it I just needed a break from that. It maybe not need, but it's healthy for me to take a brief break from all that, because I sort of have that association with just all the negative physical stuff that was going on, particularly over the past year, where I was having the nerve pain and the brain fog from the nerve pain, and on and on and on. It's just been really nice to work on something different, and just to have fun with an urban setting. Like, for example, I got this scene where you still trying to get the screen.
Yes,
the
it's
cover
frustrating
up.
me.
All right, I'm gonna keep talking.
Keep talking.
So like, for example, I got to write a scene where we've got the main character Clark, and we've got Brooke, who's a werewolf, and she's decided that she wants to cook him breakfast. And this is a very bad idea on a number of levels. And so she's got bacon out, and she's cooking breakfast, but then she starts just feeling anxious, and she's got high energy, so she starts running around and doing laps around the property.
Okay, I got it.
And then okay,
there it is.
Then,
it's gorgeous. The artist is Yanai, and he understood the assignment.
Yeah, he nailed it. He nailed it out of the park. He understood exactly what we wanted, and he executed that very well. And so Brooke basically, she leaves a pan on the oven with greasy bacon in it, and so a grease fire starts. And so Clark is asleep at this point. The fire alarm wakes him up. She's extinguishing the fire, and they're just sort of looking at the ruins of what was supposed to be breakfast. And so he's like, what happened? It's like, well, I tried to make breakfast, and so he asked her that how often does she cook? And she's like, oh, all the time. It's like, okay, all right, let me rephrase this. How often do you cook and not use either a microwave or a toaster? And she thinks, and she's like, I've done that once, including this time. And so then they agree that this was a bad idea, and she explains, that she just felt the need to run around, and so he's like, so Brooke, do you get the zoomies? And she's like, sometimes. And then they just sort of like look at the ruins of breakfast again, and she's like, would you like some Pop-Tarts? Like, Pop-Tarts would be fine.
It's a very low-key series compared to the project that's going to follow it. Which is
that project.
Yes.
So that the other project is the Honorverse book that David Weber, Tom Pope, and I are working on. So we are currently planning a 3-book series featuring the great hero of the Royal Manticoran Navy, Edward Sakanami, and the planning for. Pardon?
It's not going to be Harem.
No. It's going to be very serious. A lot of bad stuff is going to happen to very good people, and a lot of spaceships are going to blow up.
Yes,
as is expected with an Honorverse novel. Um, but yeah, our planning for book one is at a very, very mature state right now.
Mhm. You're having fun with it
And
already, and you haven't even started writing yet.
yeah, and basically, once I'm done with my Blood Knight break, I will be shifting almost immediately over into that project. And I think where Tom Pope, David, and I are with our planning, it'll probably take me about a month to whip the our notes into a detailed plot outline, and then once I have that plot outline, scene by scene, chapter by chapter breakdown, I'm just going to dive right into it. And I think probably after that one's done, I'm just going to David, Tom, and I will move into book two. And yeah, that's super exciting.
Yeah.
It's
a little overwhelming. We're not entirely sure how we ended up in this situation, but we don't
yeah.
mind it. Your writing life.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Your writing life has been a lot more exciting than mine recently. While you wrote 2 books, I'm halfway through Monster Girl Tamer, which, if you're not familiar with that one, you guys, it is going to be an Edie Skye branch of the Monster Punk Horizon series, where basically the main character gets isekai'd through the dazzling skies and has to collect monster girls to save the world.
We are branding it as an Edie Skye H.P. Holo collaboration, which I just think is just hilarious and wonderful.
Well, it's hilarious, but it's also primarily for practical purposes, connecting the series to the existing series on Amazon.
Oh yeah. No, I mean there's definitely,
but it's also, there is an actual reason for it. But I'm a little behind on. I had actually hoped to have the novel finished by this point in the month, but Jacob finished Blood Knight super fast, and so I've been working on. I did the cover design. I've been doing the editing, and then Thermopylae Protocol came in and needed additional copy editing, and so just did that.
Yeah.
And what else am I doing? It's been, and then I go in for surgery on Friday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a hysterectomy done. It's nothing life threatening. It's my fibroids be fibroiding.
But the good thing is that because we now have 2 very close to complete manuscripts, that the schedule pressure on you for Tamer has been eased, and so you get a little more time to have fun in that world, and I
think in terms of Patreon posting, I'm actually good through, because I'm posting on Patreon as I write, but now that we're sharing both Blood Knight and Monster Girl Tamer, several chapters each week, then we're doing 2 chapters of Blood Knight and 1 of Monster Girl, and I think I'm actually far enough ahead in my writing that even if I write nothing for the next few weeks, I'm still ahead on the Patreon. By the way, if you want to read both of these things early, go to the Edie Skye Patreon.
Our Patreons have been getting it good recently.
Oh yeah,
it's getting a lot of advanced chapters recently.
Yes. So see how long we can keep that up. But yes, what else? We're also planning. I had an idea for a Slice of Life Titan Mage series, so that's another thing that's boggling around in the back of my head. But I'm going to do some more writing and stuff this week. But after my surgery, I'm forcing myself to take a week off, and probably going to catch up on some reading and play some video games. Hopefully, we know you guys know I'm just going to be on Facebook goofing off. So.
Now, am I supposed to enforce this? You taking the week off, or at some point you're just going to decide to start working again like you normally do?
At some point, I'm probably just I'm day after surgery. If I know me, I'm going to be like, I'm just going to work a half day, and I'll be like trying to write on drugs, and it's not going to go well. But we're both workaholics, you guys. It's probably not incredibly healthy, but we make do.
Yeah, I think after not the day after, but the day after 2 days after I had my wrist surgery, I was writing again.
Oh yeah, you were okay, guys. I don't know if you know this about Titan Mage Dragon. Titan Mage Dragon
Bad idea.
was supposed to be 80,000 words. It went to 120,000 words. This was written while Jacob had surgery on both his wrists and his elbows. He was editing. He taught himself how to use Dragon Naturally Speaking so that he could dictate his edits while he was recovering from surgery. And it was a whole thing. Like, that book is the fact that that book is coherent is a miracle. But yeah, so
we made it.
yeah. So little I guess little wrap up. What you reading these days? Are you reading anything right now? Well, you're listening to.
So I have gone back to the beginning on Basilisk Station by David Weber, the first Omniverse novel, and I've queued up the audiobooks, and so I'm going to be sweeping through those.
Are you going to start doing Warhammer? You had this plan to get into Warhammer. So the audiobooks.
Yeah, but then I started writing harem novels. So
okay, so I don't have to learn Warhammer.
I can either start like painting, building and painting my Necrons, or write more Blood Knight.
That's true.
I don't have enough free time for both.
Oh man, we have no time.
And I think our readers want me to write more. At least I hope so.
I think so too. Oh, also on the way to MarsCon, we listened to Masterclass by Annabelle Hawthorne and Virgil Knightley, which is a slice of life harem novel, and was great. And
yes, I was genuinely impressed. Those two, they have some serious writing chops.
And we got to the first spicy scene before we got to MarsCon, which was good because I was getting impatient.
There were a few. Really, my only. I had a few minor quibbles.
Are you going to talk
because
about?
I always do.
Yeah.
But some of them were technical. That I think some of the word choice, some of the verbs were being misused and overused.
I didn't care. I thought it was great.
but that's just very, very minor quibbles.
Also, speaking of MarsCon, I gotta tell an abbreviated version of the sunglass story.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, the short version. Okay, so first off, you guys, if you like battleships, go to see the USS Wisconsin, which is near MarsCon. That's a bad reference. That's the word I'm looking for. Norfolk, Virginia. And anyway, it's really cool, but also our tour guides, Doug and Ed, are amazing. We went and toured everything. We were there all day and took several deep tours, and I had on my favorite new pair of sunglasses, and I managed to keep them on my head the entire day until we were walking up from the engine room, and I tilted my head back just so, and they fell all the way into the bilge. And they looked down there and were like, yeah, we see them, but we can't reach them right now. And I kind of was like, okay, I'm resigned. My favorite sunglasses are now an eternal part of the USS Wisconsin, which is kind of cool, but still sad. And so, but no, this was not satisfactory for Doug and Ed. And I believe
they managed to fish your glasses out of the bilge.
Ed went home to get a special tool that he had and brought it to work the next day. And they fished my glasses out of the bilge, and Doug brought them to the con because he lived nearby. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is above and beyond the service expected of tour guides.
We gave them a whole stack of free books because that was really absolutely cool. Above and beyond.
All that to say, guys, if you're ever in the Virginia Beach area, go see the Wisconsin, go tour it, and say hi to Doug and Ed because they're great. But yeah, so in terms of, let's see. Those were our audiobooks. I have been reading a ton of stuff. I'm working on Threading the Needle by Mona Lisa Foster. I actually went back to it's a space western, and I interviewed her like 2 weeks ago, so just go watch that interview. Yeah.
I am, as soon as my copy arrives, I am going to be reading Beyond Enemies
Oh,
by
yeah, Marisa Wolf's
Marissa
new one.
Wolf.
Yes.
Yes.
It's about a girl in her tank. That's all I know, but that's all I need to know. So I'm going to be reading it after you.
So yeah, a girl in her tank, and they're going to burn down the galaxy together.
It's got a great cover too. I love it so much. I mean, Bane always does good covers, but I really love that cover. Other stuff I'm reading. I remember that I actually hadn't finished The Moon in the Desert by Robert Hampson because I am chaos in all things, including reading. And so I picked that one up again. It's basically the $6 Million Man, but actual science. And it's really good thus far. Crap is happening in space. And let's see what else. I've got, let's see here. I'm also reading, those are our giveaway books. I'm not reading those. Elemental Empire by Peter North. Always have to have a good harem book going. And then I'm also reading Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which I thought it was going to infuriate Jacob because I keep reading him lines from it at random hours as we're trying to go to sleep. But no, every single time I read a line from it, you're like, oh, this person actually knows how to write. And so it's not as annoying him as I hoped it would. But anyway, it's great thus far. I like to see your reaction to things, but yeah, the writing is spectacular. Let's see what else.
Sometimes you do and say things just to see what kind of face I'll make.
Oh yeah, I do. I fully admit it. I'm reading Ravages of Honor too, by the way, Joy. It's another one that I have a nasty habit. This is Mona Lisa Foster's Ravages of Honor series. I have a nasty habit of starting a book and then getting distracted by another book and then getting distracted by another book, and so on and so forth. So I actually have about 50 books on my Kindle that are unfinished right now because I just keep getting distracted. But also, we're still watching Babylon 5. Are we watching anything else?
We're on season 2.
Yes.
Season 2, disc 2. Each season has 4 discs.
Sorry, I had to cough. It was gross.
And
as for playing, I haven't played any video games. The only thing I've been playing recently is the Digimon card game, and the main reason why I'm proud of it is because I made a deck that was entirely themed after, well, it was going to be themed after potatoes, but there weren't enough potato-themed Digimon, so it is instead themed after potatoes, burgers, and since there weren't enough burger-themed Digimon that are just snacking in their pictures, and it's a really fun deck.
So. All right, so we're at MarsCon, and we got to meet Tom Pope face to face for the first time, which was awesome getting to see him face to face. And so it's the Sunday night, and we're in the lobby and we're playing Digimon, which is kind of our tradition now.
Yeah, Jacob takes his bow tie off, and we see how many people do a double take when they see him without his bow tie as we play Digimon.
So Tom comes over, and he's it's a game. He's curious, and so he's interested in playing. So you give him your kind of gag potato deck,
and it turns out to be a really good starter deck.
But he's like up against one of my, highly refined Beelzemon decks. And at a certain point, I'm just like, I'm sorry, Tom, but this is the play that I have. And and like he had like three Digimons, including like a level 6. And I just cleaned the board.
Yeah, that deck.
I'm like, I'm sorry, Tom. Next time we'll have to have Heather give you a real deck to play.
Well, I did bring a real deck. You just didn't offer it.
You should have given him that one then.
Well, the thing is, the one thing I didn't realize about the potato deck when I built it was that it's actually a really good deck for teaching someone how to play. Because a lot of the cards, like the cards are fairly simple, and then you have some in there that have really good effects. But the illustrations, building it around illustrations was not an incredibly good tactical decision, but it did actually result in a fairly good deck for someone who is just learning how the game works.
All right. Should we be wrapping up? Talking about have we? Should we talk about upcoming
Sorry, I was
releases?
coughing again. 1 second, I got to cough again.
Oh wow, I heard that from over here.
Okay, I can breathe now. What were you going to say?
Should we be wrapping up? Should we talk about upcoming releases?
Yes. First off, our next con is coming up in April. We're going to be at SC Comic Con. We're going to have a vendor table, which means you get to hang out with us all the time. So just come by our table and say, hey, it's in Greenville, South Carolina. Upcoming releases. Also, don't forget about our contest that's running. You just fill out the Google form and we select a random winner at the end. Next release, Blood Knight is coming up in March 15th, I believe. Thermopylae Protocol is coming up in June 4th, I think, and both are up for pre-order. What else? Is there anything else? Oh, there's also, oh my gosh, the anthologies. I don't think they have pre-order links yet, but we got a ton of anthologies coming out. And
yeah, I think we're going to be in. You're in a lot of anthologies, and I am going to be in 2 this year, I think.
So Raconteur Press has 2 anthologies coming up. One is Giant Freaking Robots. The other is Giant Stompin' Robots. And I will have a Titan Mage story in Giant Freaking Robots. And Jacob will also have a Titan Mage story in Giant Stompin' Robots. So there's more Titan Mage in tiny form coming your way and a whole lot of robots in general. The other one I have not yet written the story for. But I was invited to contribute a story to Magi Noir, which is basically noir with cats. And what else? I think, there's also, I've got another Titan Mage short story coming up in Paladins of Valor, which is set to release around Fantasy Weekend. So all of these.
Yeah, I think we'll once we have like pre-order links to share, we'll have more information.
Should be coming out around or before April, though. I think one of them is set to come out in February, but yeah. So lots of stuff. I will share the links gratuitously when they are live. But
yeah, we were both asked to participate. This is back in LibertyCon last year. We were both asked to participate in a mecha what ended up being a mecha anthology.
Yeah.
And so we're like, hey, why don't we both do Titan Mage stories?
Yep.
And so I did one that's basically John Wick if he was a Titan Mage and someone made the mistake of kidnapping his wife.
And then mine is mine is basically an homage. Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. I'm gonna.
No, you go.
I don't do my hood again.
It's how does the Titan Mage version of John Wick resolve this problem? By killing everyone.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, mine is loosely inspired by that one really ferocious helicopter tutorial on Armored Core 6. And it is titled, I'm in love with a helicopter. And that is all I'm going to say about it right now.
It's a fun one. It's a very fun story.
I am going to see if I can get Dazzle over here. Let me see if I can get the printer magic to work. Let's see here, because he has not shown his face, which is a shame. All right. Usually the printer can pretty reliably summon him. Bro, what you doing? Hold it. I know where he is. Okay. He likes to sit on my sewing stuff, and the printer was not working for him this time. I think he was mostly unconscious. He looks quite unhappy to be here. So. Anyway, Dazzle says no. All right. Well, shall we wrap it up then?
I think we should wrap it up.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for hanging out with us for this hour and a half. We had a lot of fun. And we will see you whenever I schedule the next one. I don't even know when it's going to be. But thanks again, and we'll see you next time.